Sue Willoughby, welcome to the Fieldswell Podcast.
Good morning, Lauren. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here today. I know we have a lot of fun things to talk about.
We do. We have a lot in common. One of the things is our love for horses. To give our listeners some background, today's episode is going to be focused all about the healing power of horses. And horseback riding is one of my greatest passions. I grew up show jumping, was away at horse shows most weekends. And so when I saw that Sue focused on using horses to facilitate enhancing self-awareness, communication skills, and leadership with her clients, I thought, I can't wait to have her on the show.
Sounds great. Love it.
So, yeah, Sue, why don't you tell us a bit more about you and, what was the turning point in your life that made you realize the power of engaging with horses for personal development?
That's a great question, Lauren. Horses have always been sort of a thread for me. When I was a kid, like you said, you grew up around horses, you were, competitive rider and so forth. I think most girls go through, the horsey phase, and some of us just never grow out of it, right?
It's true. It's
And
true.
I grew up in upstate New York. I would have my mom take me to the barn in like 3 feet of snow, and then I would just be there for like the whole weekend. And I didn't realize that at the time it was like my happy place. My mom, I grew up with an alcoholic parent, and so being at the barn made me feel really good. And I just loved. I would eat their grain. I would smell them. Right?
I was like running around on the pony jumps, like running around, pretending to be a horse. Yes.
Yeah.
I get it.
And then just at different points throughout my life, when I was sort of in my late teens, early 20s, I worked at a summer camp for people with disabilities, and I was in the horse program. And at that time, this was like in the 70s, and I didn't even know what, therapeutic riding was, but that's what we were doing. And so I picked up on it there. And horses have always just kind of been or appeared. They found me at certain junctures in my life where I've needed that support, and I realized, oh, that's what's happening. So
Yeah.
kind of one thing led to another, from being involved with therapeutic riding, and then later in life working at a therapeutic riding center. I was like, I really want to do more work that is going to be healing, but I didn't want to do the riding piece of it. And so all the work that I do is at Liberty on the ground, which is a beautiful experience in and of itself.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the short story.
I love that. No, because I rode competitively for a decade. When I first started, I was at the stable all day, like as long as I could be there, riding multiple ponies and then horses. And at one point I was even homeschooled because I was spending so much time. And I'm glad I had that growing up, because it really taught me hard work, resilience, bonding with an animal, working hard to become great at a sport. And it kept me out of trouble before I knew what trouble was.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So tell us more about how Equus Coaching works.
Okay, so generally what happens, I've already talked about the horses being at liberty. And for your listeners that don't know what that means, it means that the horse is not on, doesn't have a halter or a lead rope or any real physical connection with the horse. Like I said, all the activities are done on the ground. And we usually work, if I'm working individually, I work in a small space, like a round pen or a small contained arena, so that the horse has room to move around, but you don't have to chase them across the pasture because their own devices, that's what would happen. And then when we do group activities, it may be in a larger arena. Maybe we're doing some herding exercises. And basically what I do is I will ask my client to set an intention, something that they want to work on during the session. I give them a safety demo. I show them a couple of ways to use their energy to move the horse should they desire. Some people don't. And then once they've set their intention and we understand, what that is. And funny thing is that it never ends up being the same thing that they go in there with.
Interesting. Yeah.
Always comes up differently. And then I let them interact with the horse.
Mm.
And as I'm doing this, I'm watching the horse's behavior, the person's behavior, and I may ask them for some feedback, what they're seeing in the horse. And it's really interesting because, horses mirror our behavior,
Mhm.
right? And people will project some of their stuff onto the horse. I've heard the horse doesn't like me, the horse is bored with me, and I'm like, oh, okay. So watching the horse's behavior, because horses are just horses. They're
Mhm.
going to take care of themselves. What most people don't understand is that they are prey animals
Mm.
and we are predators. They're also herd animals, and they live in communities. Even when they're in a riding stable and they have their own stalls and whatever else,
Yeah.
they're still connected with each other through nonverbal communication. A swish of a tail, tick of an ear or something, it says a lot. So
Yeah.
I look for those kinds of behaviors. And then it gives me the opportunity to ask some really good open-ended coaching questions,
Mm.
because the horse is going to connect with the human if they feel safe.
Yes.
And that's a big part of it.
It's so true. I say the horses can really feel and tune into your energy. If you are on a horse and you're nervous or fearful, that horse can't wait to get you off its back.
And they can also help with that too.
Yeah. So, you spoke about setting an intention, which I believe is so important for personal growth and development. Like, what is it you want to work on? What are your goals? What are we moving toward? Give an
Mhm.
example of an intention someone would set when they know they're planning to go do, Equus coaching and be in there with a wild animal.
Yeah. Um, uh, some of the big ones, I've had a lot of people say, I want to find more joy in my life.
Mhm.
Okay, great. That is a very broad topic. What does that mean? What does that look like? And so that gives me the opportunity to watch how they're interacting with the horse and ask them, what does joy feel like? A lot of the work that I do is in the body, right?
Mhm.
Because like you said, horses will connect with us physically. And by physically, I mean like on a bio level where, they sense our heartbeat. They, all of our rhythms, our biorhythms, because I want to know, is this, when they're in the wild, they're going to pick up on all of that from a predator. And like I said, we are technically predators. And they're going to assess, because they're constantly assessing their environment. Is this person congruent, right? Or do they have a game face on? And, like I said, if you're afraid of them, or if you're scared, if you walk in there and you say, I'm really scared, I'm really nervous today, the horse is like, that's cool, I got it. But if you try and hide that, they're like, oh, no, thank you. I want to stay
Wow.
away from you.
Mhm.
So for example, go back to joy in your life. I want to have more joy in my life. Okay. What does that look like? What does that feel like in your body? Where, people are like, huh? What are you talking
Yeah.
about? So the horses are really good at bringing people back to their body, getting
Wow.
out of your head, because as you know, if you're in your head and you're around horses, it can be not safe, right? Things can happen very quickly if your body is not sensing your horse's movement, as you mentioned. If they may want you off if they
Yes.
feel like something's going on.
Yeah.
So it really helps to build awareness and put some sort of physicality into whatever the intention is. So for example, joy. So so I'm watching how the person is, and maybe they're very stiff and they're, marching around trying to get the horse to interact with them. And they're, and it's like, is this joy to you? How is
Right.
how are you feeling right now? And they may say, oh, whatever it is. Most of the time when you ask someone how they're feeling in that situation, they're going to give you a word. And then I have to pull out of them, how do you identify with that word or that feeling? Where is it in your body? And it's interesting because and I have had people do this very thing where, they're very stiff and everything. And then when they loosen up, they start to let their guard down. They get more in their body. They get grounded. We do some breathing exercises. The next thing you know, they're like running and skipping around the arena and
Wow.
laughing. And so it's,
There's joy. Yeah.
yeah,
It sounds like the horses really bring them back to the present moment.
yeah, absolutely. Because you know that this is where horses live. And I love talking about other horse people because they
Yeah.
get it, right?
Yeah.
But it's a really simple concept because horses are always in the moment. They have to be. It's just their being, they need to sense, are they safe? And that in and of itself is awareness. And we need to build more of that in the moment awareness. Because when an emotion bubbles up or a reaction bubbles up, it starts somewhere and you're going to feel it in your body somewhere. And if you can start to identify that and then say, oh, there's that gut punch, or there's that twitch in my, neck or tension in my chest. I know what that means. I know what that feeling is going to lead to. And it gives you the opportunity to stop and take a breath, assess what's going on and react, change your reaction in a different way.
It's so interesting, to start with an intention, to ask these open-ended questions and to watch how the horses kind of mirror you and watch the behavior of the horses and what's going on, and to help that, help you determine what the client is going through in that moment.
Yeah, it's really fun. And when you're in talk therapy or talk coaching or whatever it is, right? It's just you and your coach. Now, if the person is a skilled coach or a skilled therapist, which we hope that they all are, eventually they can get to the crux of the matter. But it may take a little bit longer because we can say anything. We can just talk up a blue streak. And I've seen people try and do that in a horse coaching session. And they're just explaining away everything. I'm like, okay, well, when you're done, the horse will then kick in. But it does help sort of speed things up because when you have a 1,200-pound animal staring you in the face, you can't hide. And the other beauty is that, and you are probably aware of this as well, that makes people kind of, when I'm holding space for them and the horse in their session, is that it's clearly and unequivocally a no judgment zone because horses don't judge you.
Yeah.
They don't care what you look like. All they care is that you're being honest.
So to say you use Equus Coaching to help women dramatically improve their lives and feel more empowered, talk about maybe a client who comes to you, they're feeling really stuck. Do you have a session with them prior to putting them in the arena or in the pen with the horse, or walk us through what that looks like and how you believe it facilitates that empowerment?
Yeah, that's a great question because I actually do online coaching as well. And knowing what I know about horses, I bring that knowledge with me. So when I'm doing an online session, I am the horse as well.
Okay. It all started with eating the grain.
So they're nibbling some grass in the corner. I bring a lot of that wisdom into that. So it depends. I may have a couple of online coaching sessions with someone or in-person sessions, whatever. And then at that point, maybe to just kind of get a better sense of where they're coming from. Maybe they're not quite ready to get in the arena with the horse. And then we'll move to an actual coaching session.
And individuals who come to you, do you find there are like a top 3 challenges they face, or is it kind of widespread across the board?
Especially the demographic that I focus on, which are women over 40 or 50. They have kind of hit a wall, whatever that is, where, or they don't know how to get out of their comfort zone anymore. And that is kind of the way I live my life, is outside of my comfort zones, because it's how I grew up. But a lot of it is, I don't know what my identity is anymore. So kind of, I want to try something else, but I don't know what that is. And, maybe their kids have moved out, so they're empty nesters. They're at a point in their career where they may be getting ready to retire, or they have hit a plateau in their career. So they're stuck on some level. And they just, for whatever reason, don't have the confidence and the vision to get beyond that, whatever that is. So that's a big one, I would
Yeah.
say.
Helping individuals get unstuck and kind of level up in their lives or begin
Yeah.
this next chapter.
Or
And
go somewhere else. Yeah.
right, what is coming across to me is like sometimes it's a lot of pressure to sit one-on-one with a coach because like you're kind of under the spotlight. Like,
Mhm.
what is your agenda for the session? What are you looking to work on? When you have this horse, I feel like it almost might take a little bit of the pressure off for those who are just like feeling lost or stuck and not sure where to begin, to bring in this really spiritual animal and see what the animal kind of draws out of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the getting stuck point, when they're working with the horse, it's not about getting the horse to do a specific task. However, that's what the person may be focusing on. And so they're working on this task and they keep doing the same thing, the same thing, the same thing, and they're getting, guess what? The same results. So it's a great way to experiment in a way that is non-threatening and non-judgmental. Why don't you try something else? What else could you try? Oh,
Yeah.
I can do something different. Yeah. Good. So what else can you try? And it's just nice because it gives them that opportunity. Like you said, there's not somebody staring at them going, okay, what do you think? How are
Yeah.
you feeling? Even
Right.
though maybe asking some of those questions, how does that make you feel?
Right.
The horse is there as a feedback loop. And like you said, it's not just a distraction, but it does give them something else to focus on besides themselves and besides their whatever it is that they're working on.
And I'm wondering, could you give us an example without like saying any names? Not sure if you can, due to confidentiality, but of one of the biggest like transformation stories you've seen from your clients working with horses.
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest ones was a person who had lost the joy in their life through their career, through their whatever it was, everything. They're just like, I don't know how to have fun anymore. I don't know how to play. I don't know what that looks like. So that was a really big, and when I told you about it the first time, I condensed it, but it happened over a number of sessions where it actually started out where the person felt more comfortable with the horse on the lead line. Okay. So they were leading the horse very rigidly, gripping the rope, depth grip on the rope on the lead. And then by the end, I mean, they were talking more openly and were able to, like, we did an exercise towards the end of our sessions, or in our series. And I said, okay, tell me about your ideal day. And this was a over the phone kind of conversation. And the person just rolled into it, like in a way with amazing detail. Like, I'm wearing a plaid shirt and I'm doing this and I'm getting into my truck and I'm going into town and I'm having a cup of coffee. And it was just like so vivid. I was like, and how does that make you feel?
Right.
And they said happy, and I'm experiencing joy in this vision. And so it was very transformational, and I'm really getting kind of goosebumps thinking about it. But
Yeah. And is there a certain number of sessions you recommend your clients do?
I would love for them to just be with me all the time.
Right. Forever.
Right. It depends on the person. Sometimes people will come in for like a quarterly tune-up, and they may be either in therapy or some other coaching, and maybe this is just they come to crack that next level or do something like that. I do like packages, where it might be a combination of online sessions and horse sessions. I say 4 to 6 is really good because by that time, not maybe it's like 1 a month, or maybe we do a couple of coaching, online sessions and then an in-person session. So it really depends. I also do retreats with a co-facilitator, which are super fun. I have 3 of those coming up this year.
Where are they located?
2 in California and 1 in Colorado. So
Beautiful.
and they are on my website as well. But those are really fun because we limit it to 12 people. And it's a really amazing bonding experience for the participants because they're all like, they're watching other people's sessions and they're like, oh my, yes. You see them like, that's me too, so there's all of that. And then they start talking to each other and it's just beautiful to be have a fully immersive 3 days with horses on a beautiful ranch and
Yeah.
just out in nature. It's incredible.
It sounds amazing. It really does. So I want to touch a little bit more on you before we wrap up, because you've had a very diverse life and career outside of coaching.
Yeah.
You were a nightclub DJ, a stand-up comic. I'm curious how your diverse life experiences have helped you support and guide others who are limiting themselves, yet have a desire to reach for more.
Yes. So those were only a couple examples. The list is very long, and I know that we don't have time for that because
Give
we
us a
end up
couple
doing
more.
a mini series. I think that, like I said, quickly growing up in a situation where I really never knew what to expect kind of put me automatically out of my comfort zone, because my comfort zone was discomfort. I never knew what I was going to walk into. So I think, and then I am also just a very curious person. And when something lights me up, I have to learn more about it. Like, someone gave me an intro flight training, thing for my birthday one year. And I'm like, okay. So then I went, now I'm going to learn to fly.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy a plane, so I go deep, and not everybody, not everybody needs to do that. But the thing I think that I can tell people, the takeaway for that is, if you want to try something new, you do not have to do it you don't have to do it for 10,000 hours. You don't have to become an expert in it. By living the way I do, and I feel like I've had a lot of life experiences that I wouldn't have had if I just shut things down, or if I was afraid to do something. So I can help people to say, you know what, it's not the end of the world to try something new, and also just be curious and be, have that beginner mindset. And I think that scares people more than anything. They get to a certain level of expertise in their career or whatever, that they're afraid to start over and look stupid and not know something.
Yeah, I say this to people a lot, like, especially with starting a podcast, you have to be like uncomfortable with that, like, first couple of years as you learn how to do it.
Yeah.
But to become good at anything, you just have to start and commit to that period of that uncomfortable period where, like, yeah, I'm new at this. I don't really know what I'm doing yet, but eventually I will, because I'm committed and I'm consistent with it.
And that's the fun. That's the thing. You've got to find joy. All right. Now we're back to joy again. You have to find joy in the learning process and be okay to, like you said, screw up, right? If you do, right? It's not a big deal. I mean,
it's really not.
2 years ago, I decided I wanted to start playing polo, and as an equestrian, you know what that means.
Yeah. Heavy mallet.
Heavy mallet, falling off, shattering wrist. That's what happened.
Gosh. Yeah.
But I did, that put me out of commission for the summer. So,
dang. We are preconditioned to like avoid danger or fear to keep us safe. But I think, it's not often life or death. Lean into the unknown. That is where you will grow. That is where you will learn. That is where you will evolve and elevate your being, because now you're like, wow, now I can do something new.
Yeah, exactly. Very well put. Very well put.
So as we begin to wrap up, is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with today?
I think I'm just going to restate what I've already said is, don't be afraid to try something new, and stop judging yourself for, maybe not being an expert at the beginning, because that is where the fun lies, is in the learning process.
And where can our listeners find you?
The best thing is probably my website, willoughbycoaching.com, or on Instagram, Sue_Willoughby. And I guess you'll put that in the show notes as well. Yeah.
And where exactly can our listeners find you if they want to work with you in person with the horses?
Through my website is the best way, or they can DM me through Instagram. And also on my website, I have the 3 coaching retreats that I have coming up too. So.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren.